You know that feeling, right? You're absolutely crushing it in the gym, hitting new PRs. But then you get on the field, and nothing. Your performance has just hit a wall. So why doesn't all that hard-earned gym strength always translate to athletic speed? Well, in this explainer, we are going to dive deep into the science to figure that out.
I mean, it's the classic wisdom, isn't it? Lift more weight, you'll run faster, jump higher, be more explosive. But is that really the whole picture? We're going to really unpack that assumption and see what the science actually says about how strength in the weight room transfers to power in your sport.
All right, let's get into it. Here's our game plan. First, we'll lay out this gym-to-field problem. Then we'll look at why that strength seems to get lost in translation. We're going to uncover the brain's secret role in all this, introduce the one concept that ties it all together, the principle of specificity, and finally, talk about how you can train smarter, not just harder.
So, let's start with what we're calling the gym-to-field problem. It's this surprising and frankly frustrating gap between the raw strength we build with a barbell and the explosive, game-ready power we actually need. And look, it's pretty much undeniable. For any sport that needs short, all-out bursts of power, we're talking sprinting, track cycling, BMX, coaches see strength training as absolutely fundamental. The logic is simple, right? A bigger, stronger muscle should be able to produce more force. But here's where it gets interesting. The very same coaches who live and breathe heavy lifting have noticed something odd. An athlete's 1-rep max in the squat doesn't always line up with their time on the track. There's a serious disconnect happening.
And this isn't just something coaches are noticing. The research completely backs it up. Sometimes strength training gives you a massive performance boost. Other times, it does, well, nothing. And get this, in some cases, the wrong kind of training can actually make you slower by messing with your body's coordination.
So what is going on here? If our muscles are the engine, why doesn't a bigger engine always mean a faster car? Well, it turns out the answer isn't just about the size of the engine. It's about the skill of the driver, or in our case, the brain. And this is a perfect example of how scientists dig into this. They don't just care about how much weight you can lift. They look at the nitty-gritty, like the power being produced at each individual joint, your hip, your knee, your ankle, to see how the actual mechanics of your movement change after a training program. So here's the absolute key takeaway. Your brain learns movement patterns, not just how to flex a single muscle. Think about a heavy squat. It teaches your brain to fire your quads and hamstrings at the same time to keep that knee joint rock solid. But on a bike, you need them firing in a super precise, alternating sequence to slam that force into the pedals. That pattern you mastered in the gym can literally interfere with the one you need on the field.
And this brings us to the real star of the show, the part we almost always forget about in the gym, your central nervous system. The secret to being explosive isn't just in your muscles, it's in the signals your brain is firing off. Okay, let's talk about a hugely important concept, rate of force development, or RFD. See, in most sports, you never have enough time to generate your absolute max strength. A sprinter's foot is on the ground for less than 1/10 of a second. So it's not really about how strong you are, it's about how much of that strength you can unleash right now, in an instant.
And we can break this down even further. That initial explosion of force in the first 100 milliseconds, that's almost all on your nervous system. It's about how fast and hard your brain can send that go signal. It's only later in the movement that your raw muscle size really starts to play a bigger role. And check this out, it gets even cooler. For any fast movement, your brain pulls off this incredible, lightning-fast 3-part signal called the ABC pattern. First, a huge burst to the main muscle to get things going. Then, a tiny braking signal to the opposing muscle to keep everything stable. And finally, one more push from the main muscle to finish the job. Training is really just improving your brain's ability to coordinate this incredible neural dance. Okay, I know. This sounds pretty complex. We've got coordination patterns, neural drive, firing rates. So how in the world do we design training that actually works? Well, it all boils down to one single, beautiful, elegant principle. So what's the one big idea? The one foundational law of training that governs every single adaptation your body makes? Here it is, the principle of specificity. It's such a simple idea, really. Your body adapts very, very precisely to the exact demands you place on it. The more your training looks, feels, and moves just like your sport, the better the results are going to be. You might also hear this called the SAID principle, specific adaptations to imposed demands. It's just a fancy way of saying you get good at what you practice. If you train slow and heavy, you get really good at moving heavy things. Slowly. If you want to be explosive, you have to train your muscles and, more importantly, your nervous system to fire in the exact patterns at the exact speeds that your sport demands.
So how do we actually put this into practice? This isn't about giving up on the weight room. Not at all. It's about making much smarter choices when we're in there to make sure the strength we build actually shows up on game day.
You have to think of training as a balancing act. We want all the good stuff, the increased neural drive, the stiffer tendons, the raw power. But we need to minimize the bad stuff, like learning clunky movement patterns or packing on extra muscle that just slows us down.
This chart is fantastic because it lays it all out so clearly. Just look at the difference between controlled and ballistic lifts. If you want to improve your rate of force development, that explosive speed we keep talking about, then ballistic, fast, intentional movements with moderate to heavy loads are the obvious winner. Slow, controlled lifting, even if it's super heavy, just isn't as good for developing that explosive pop. So let's boil this all down. The takeaways are pretty clear, right? For explosive power, you've got to train ballistically. For pure brute strength, heavy loads are still the king. Interestingly, even endurance athletes can get a big boost from heavy, low-rep training to improve their efficiency. And for every single athlete out there, multi-joint exercises are absolutely essential for teaching your body the skill of coordination.
So the next time you walk into the gym, I want you to ask yourself this one question. Are you just moving weight from point A to point B, or are you practicing the specific neuroskill of explosive, coordinated movement? Because in the end, that tiny distinction is what separates strength in the gym from victory on the field.